Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're tuning in from today. My name is Sam Kunjukunju, and I'm the Senior Director of Bank Community Engagement at the American Bankers Association. I primarily work out of our foundation, that's the ABA Foundation, which is the 501c3 nonprofit arm of the ABA. And I focus on issues related to older adults and community development to support the financial well-being of our customers and communities all across the nation. Just want to say thank you so much, Christy and the National Sheriff's Association, for inviting me to be here today to talk about elder financial exploitation and scams impacting seniors. Before we get started, I should share a couple of key things to bear in mind for today's presentation. First, we're recording today's session so that you'll be able to access it at a later time. And Christy will get on the line toward the end of our webinar today to tell you a little bit more about how to access it appropriately and how long it should take. Please also use the chat feature to engage, and I'll address questions at the very end of the presentation. And then lastly, please note that I'm presenting today through the support from a cooperative agreement awarded by the Department of Justice. That's their COPS office, which is the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. My opinions are my own and do not reflect those of any federal agencies. Now that that's settled, for today's session, I'll be sharing about a couple of key points around elder financial exploitation. Specifically, I'll talk about demographic data and what's going on with our current aging landscape in the US. We'll take a look at some popular scams, which is really going to be the bulk of my presentation today. And then I'll touch on some key resources, mainly around educational resources to help have you all connect with communities in a little bit of a different way to work with our bankers and share some information through that route. And then hopefully we'll have some great time at the end for some questions to address. So first off, hopefully you're on the same slide with me where we're taking a look at this current context, and let's talk about some of the things that's going on around the nation. So all across the country, everyone's aging. Of course, that's really no surprise to anybody on the line. But what's really important to recognize is that we're experiencing a demographic transition. This is often referred to as the silver tsunami or the age wave. Please don't blame me for the title or the description. I didn't come up with that, but it is something that's often utilized or used, I should say, in everyday language. And what we're noticing is that every single day, there are 10,000 baby boomers. Those are people who were born between 1946 and 1964, and they're turning 65, and they're continuing to do so until 2030. So at 2030, what we're going to find is that 1 out of every 5 people in the United States, that's about 20% of the country, will be age 65 and older. And just 4 years later, in 2034, there will be more people age 65 and older than kids for the first time in our nation's history. This is a huge change, and it's impacting industries everywhere, but especially the financial services industry, because as you can note with the median net worth information that I've got on the slide, people tend to have more money as they get older, which is something that scam artists, con artists, criminals are definitely paying attention to. Before I get into a couple more statistics, I should first define elder financial exploitation. There are several different definitions that are available. You'll note the top one, but the one that I tend to favor is a short and simple version from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And that's elder financial exploitation is the illegal or improper use of an older person's property, funds, assets. And that's the situation that we're going to be addressing today. It's fairly difficult to accurately describe the size and scope of elder financial exploitation because it often goes unreported. As many of you know, elders are typically ashamed or scared to report, and there's a number of different factors contributing to it. The situation could be that they're humiliated and they don't want to discuss it. There's a lot of feelings and emotions tied to what they're going through, but we know that an estimated 20% of older adults are victims of some form of elder abuse. And we know that losses run in the billions annually. So this is indeed not a small issue. Quite often when we talk about it from a professional standpoint, it's an epidemic. We think about epidemics in terms of, COVID and, different things of that nature, but really the size and scale and the scope of this particular issue is immense. And it's incredibly important to stress that. Studies seem to indicate that losses typically range in the billions. That's 3 billion to 36 billion. But honestly, that may simply be the tip of the iceberg. AARP notes that the average per person losses may actually be upwards of $120,000. So why are seniors targeted? Well, for a couple of different reasons. They have had a lifetime to earn income, save their financial assets. As you noted earlier on the slide that we looked at a little while ago, the median net worth for older adults, for seniors, for elders, typically is a lot greater than people who are, 20 and below, or even 30 and below. We know that seniors may receive regular payments through retirement accounts and Social Security. There's also some data that seems to indicate that they may be more trusting than younger generations, certainly more so than mine, and they appreciate connecting with someone. They may also be eager to help, and as a result, they may be more likely to fall prey to sinister folks who want to exploit their kindness. But I do want to emphasize, it is not the senior's fault in any of these situations. And I'll get to some of the circumstances in which scammers are masters of persuasion, taking advantage of and victimizing older adults. I do want to emphasize that while anyone may be a target, the aging process can bring about mental and physical changes that elevate the risks of elder financial exploitation. Those who experience cognitive impairment issues like dementia or Alzheimer's or some other sort of mental disability could be a contributing factor to increasing their risk. Poor physical health, functional impairments like disabilities, as well as those who are socially isolated and dependent on others, are especially at risk to financial exploitation. When older adults are victimized, there are substantial repercussions. So I talked about some of the financial repercussions, but beyond that, there are often losses in trust of others that older adults experience, intense feelings of fear or shame and guilt. They could end up severely depressed. They may lose their homes as a result of their financial situation, all of which can increase their risk of early death. So given the magnitude and challenges associated with the elder financial exploitation, prevention is absolutely critical. And obviously you all know that, otherwise you probably would not be on the call today. Now that we've gotten a better understanding of the impact of elder financial exploitation, I'd like to take a look at how scammers work. As I alluded to earlier, and as many of you know, scammers are masters of storytelling, masters of persuasion. They're skilled salespeople. When interacting with people, with seniors, they often take the time to develop relationships and prey on people's vulnerabilities, like loneliness, to gain a person's trust. Many scam artists actually study people's behavior. So there's a great docuseries by National Geographic. If you haven't heard of it, it's called Trafficked, and I would really recommend you checking it out. In their first episode alone, a journalist learns that scammers, for instance, in Jamaica, learn how to interact with Americans who are on vacation and then use those experiences to later exploit Americans within the United States. So unfortunately, we find that criminals take their time to research behavior, and many of the scams and the criminal enterprises that are involved in this are not one-off situations, but they're part of larger organized crime syndicates that oftentimes could be based outside of the United States. A large portion of scams also occur by acquiring information via the internet and through social apps. People voluntarily post everything about their lives, from what they eat to what they do on vacation, where they are, what do they like. You can pretty much learn all about what a person likes and dislikes just by accessing the information about them on the web. There's plenty of data for someone to search and learn about an individual with just a few clicks. It doesn't really require a lot of investigation at this point in time. And scammers use this information to develop relationships and exploit people. In some instances, I'll also mention that criminals also may buy lists and contact information to determine who they want to target. They may infiltrate groups seniors belong to. They may go door to door which you tend to see a lot more frequently with contractor or home repair scams, which I'll get into in a little while. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of different types of scams that are going on that are targeting everybody and especially targeting seniors. So over the next couple of minutes, I'll take you through a couple of common ones for us to note for the purposes of this presentation. Lottery scams are exactly what they sound like. Someone receives a letter or a call indicating that they've won the lottery, and it's usually for something they did not enter. A really popular one is the Jamaican lottery scam, which I referenced a few minutes ago. Scammers usually ask the victim to respond immediately. The letter or the caller may state that the victim must pay a fee of some kind, such as taxes, administrative fees, some sort of visa fees, or something like that, to receive their winnings. And the victim usually hears that he or she has to pay something along the lines of, $1,000 to receive $10,000, or maybe even $10,000 to receive $10 million. Sounds like a great deal, right? And you pay a little bit, but you actually get a lot, except, of course, it's a total scam. The key point to note is that you should never, ever pay to play, and that's something that we always recommend in terms of sharing information to older adults and your communities in preventing these types of scams. Plus, it's incredibly important to note, Americans cannot legally participate in a foreign lottery, whether or not they bought a ticket. And oftentimes these Jamaican lottery scams, for instance, tell you, oh, there was no purchase necessary, or you did this through being involved in something else. But in reality, of course, it's all fake, it's all bogus, it's a total scam. Family imposter scams are pretty brutal. They play all on the emotional bonds that we have as people. Criminals call seniors and they pretend to be a younger relative in some kind of distress. Usually there's some sort of contrived or made up emergency situation in which Johnny got into a car accident and is in jail and needs bail money immediately, or Betty's in the hospital and desperately needs money for a procedure. Throughout COVID, these scams considerably increased, with people claiming they got stuck in a foreign country due to lockdowns and they need money. Regardless of the specific scenario, there are a couple of common features to the way that this one works. Caller impersonates a family member, pressures the senior to send money by wiring it immediately, and begs the elder to keep it secret from everyone else. So in these types of scenarios, you may hear something like a caller saying, "Hi, Grandpa, it's your favorite grandson. Can you guess which one?" Now, bear in mind, the caller probably sounds a little muffled or spotty, but what do you think Grandpa says? "Is this Bobby?" "Why, yes, Grandpa, it's Bobby. Do you remember where I go to school?" And Grandpa says, "Of course, you go to Texas State. How's school?" Then the caller states that school's all right, but he's having some sort of issue. "I'm really sorry to call you about this, but I'm in trouble. A couple of friends and I decided to drive down to Mexico for spring break. We're out having such a good time, and I ended up with a speeding ticket. I'm in a bind. They locked me up because their rules are different here. I can't get back into the country until I can pay a fine. I'm out of cash. The ATM card doesn't work down here. Can you please wire me some money? I'll pay you back as soon as I get back home. Please, please don't tell mom and dad. I know I messed up. I just want to get home." So using these types of tactics, the scammer plays on an older adult, a senior's emotions, and tries to convince them to send money. The scenarios certainly get more complex, but you essentially get the idea. Another set of imposter scams includes government imposter scams. Scammers call or text elders claiming to be from Social Security, the IRS, Medicare, or some other agency. And they claim that the elder did not show up for jury duty, or that they did not pay their bill, or may state that their account is frozen. The scammer will then ask to confirm the victim's Social Security number and then ask them to wire money, pay by gift card, or cryptocurrency to rectify the issue, typically immediately or within 24 hours. They'll usually threaten to arrest the senior with, threaten to arrest or maybe deport them, or state that they will cancel critical Social Security or Medicare benefits. But the thing is, as you all know, the government doesn't take payment by gift card or crypto. And of course, the government typically gives you the ability to appeal. So you'll have more than 24 hours to respond from a legitimate government official. Anyone trying to get a senior or to get an individual to act immediately is usually incredibly suspicious. These types of situations can also arise with spoofing, which tends to be a huge issue with caller ID scenarios or situations where someone may be calling up and pretending to be law enforcement and it says 911. So an older adult might be more willing to believe that this is all legitimate if they see these types of situations or see these types of numbers or official seeming phone calls pop up. Charity scams tend to pop up essentially after natural disasters, but anyone can reach out at any time. Often the scammer makes a plea to request an immediate donation after sharing some sort of a sob story for a made-up organization. A number of scammers have particularly claimed to be representing veterans organizations when in fact they do not, or there's no such organization. Right now, I'm sure that there are a number out there that are all around the war in Ukraine, and people are trying to take advantage of Americans' generosity and exploiting the situation that's going on abroad. Another type of scam to really focus on revolves around bogus investments. So the thing to bear in mind with these types of scenarios is that investing is all about the trade-off between risk and reward. And investment scams typically promise a high reward with zero to little risk. In these situations, scammers want elders to fork over a significant amount of cash in return for empty promises and lies. Much of these scams are actually based out of Israel, and callers pretend to be from New York or London or Singapore or some other financial hub around the world. They usually start out over the phone, or criminals may invite an elder to an in-person seminar or maybe even offer lunch to convince victims to invest in, well, pretty much nothing by using agents on the ground within the US. So unlike some of the other scams I just talked about and that we've looked at so far, contractor scams are usually in-person scams. People may show up at your door and claim that they're doing work in the neighborhood and there's something wrong with the house. Scammers prey on an elder's health, knowing that the elder probably can't go up and look at the roof or some other issue very easily. The criminals will usually ask for upfront payment, start the job, ask for more money for some reason or another, and then once they receive the money, the criminals will just leave, never to be seen again. Romance scams are especially brutal and, believe it or not, have disproportionately impacted elders. In 2021 alone, the Federal Trade Commission reported that consumers lost a whopping $547 million in losses due to romance scams alone. They often start on a dating site or app. Facebook is especially popular among older adults, and a scammer typically professes love very quickly, fawns over the victim. The scammer usually claims to be an American, but insists they're overseas for business, are in the military, or got stuck because of a lockdown. Then they lure the victim off the dating site or app and ask for money. Usually the scammer claims it's for overseas travel needs or visa fees or medical bills or something along those lines. They'll usually not meet in person in any way, shape, or form. And once they have the money, they'll disappear and then move on to their next target. Tech support scams are usually based out of India, and a senior may receive a phony error message on their computer while surfing the web with a number to call. Or they may receive a phone call from someone impersonating a tech company like Google or Apple or Microsoft. The criminals will try to convince the victim to provide remote access to their computer, sign up for a bogus subscription plan, and steal their identity. But the goal with all of this, regardless of the specific type of scam, it's to get their money and get access to their identities. But no matter the particular type of scam, there are some key warning signs to be aware of and to share with people in your community. They often require immediate action. Scammers usually insist on secrecy. They require money upfront and often use hard to track or hard to reverse payments, such as gift cards or crypto, cash, or require wiring money. So now that we looked at some of the prevailing scams affecting older adults, I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about some available resources. At the American Bankers Association Foundation, that's the ABA foundation that I'm a part of, we actually put together a Protecting Seniors Guide. It's mainly aimed at banks, but I'm including it here because it has some great information on the state of financial exploitation, top scams in play, the roles of adult protective services and law enforcement, and specific suggestions about partnerships. You can check out this free guide at aba.com/seniors. So ABA is an American Bankers Association.com/seniors. Just check it out under the resources section and you can take a look at all the information there. I'd also like to highlight a number of infographics that we've developed with the Federal Trade Commission. These are all about scams that typically and disproportionately affect elders, many of which include like the ones that I just talked about a few moments ago. These are issues on romance scams, money mule scams, phishing scams, impostor scams, government impostor scams, fake check scams, things of that nature. You are welcome to check them all out, download them, and share them. You can also access them directly at aba.com/consumer. So once again, the domain is ABA is an American Bankers Association.com/consumers. Just be sure to visit the Protect Yourself and Your Money tile on the right side of the page, and you'll be able to access all of that information there. And one of the main topics that I'd like to talk about today briefly over the next few minutes or so is all about a key piece with education. So at the ABA Foundation, I champion a program called Safe Banking for Seniors. It is a program that is specifically involved in having bankers go into communities and lead in-person or virtual presentations so that older adults, their caregivers, their relatives, their friends, their family, pretty much anybody who's interested, has the ability to learn about how to prevent elder financial exploitation and also ways to support financial caregiving. It's a completely free program where we at the ABA Foundation put together key resources on how our banks can go into communities to share all this information completely for free. So that's the banker side. And what they do is they typically talk about a couple of key specific areas. They talk about things like avoiding scams, preventing identity theft, choosing a financial caregiver, acting as a responsible financial caregiver, understanding powers of attorney, choosing an executor, and also planning for stages of cognitive decline. These are all associated with informing older adults and communities all around issues around protecting older adults. I try to expand the modules that I just highlighted, the topics every year in one form or another. But it's a great opportunity to get education right out to your communities. So you're probably thinking, okay, so that's for bankers. But the way that you can all be involved is through a free online platform that we've developed called FinEdLink. It stands for our Financial Education Link. It's FinEdLink once again. And the idea here is that it's a free web-based portal where any group, whether it's a consumer group, a church, a temple, a synagogue, adult protective services, sheriff's departments, law enforcement, pretty much anyone willing to host a banker can request a free Safe Banking for Seniors banker-led presentation on any of the topics that I just mentioned. So if you're working in the community and you want to host an hour-long session or so on any one of our topics, you are welcome to request a free presentation for the people in your communities. You would simply just need to host a banker at a particular location or ask if you can do it through a virtual opportunity. And you can start the process simply by visiting the link right on the screen. That's aba.com/FinEdLink. Once again, that's ABA as in American Bankers Association.com/FinEdLink, like financial education link. Once you do, our system will ask some information about who you are. So a little bit about providing your name, your phone number, your email, and relevant contact information. You'll also be asked to input some brief information about your organization or group, where it's located, and to share information about the potential event. For instance, we'd want to know how many people you're inviting, the topics you'd like to include, things of that nature. What I would like to emphasize is you are welcome to use this program as much or as often as you'd like. You could do it on an annual basis. You could do it on a monthly basis. You could do it on a weekly basis. Weekly might be a little bit more challenging in terms of setting things up, but we're simply very open is what I'm trying to say. And the one point to bear in mind is each particular topic usually lasts about an hour or so. So as you're thinking about how many topics to focus on a particular day, it's usually a good idea to limit it to maybe 1 or 2 topics max, just for the purposes of the actual presenter and also for the audience. As you know, people don't tend to have the best attention span these days. So if we limit it to maybe 1 or 2 topics, 1 to 2 hours, it's usually a good idea from there. But you can, schedule it out over a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on how you want to do it. But our program is set up in such a way to provide you all with an opportunity to educate your communities by facilitating a connection with our participating bankers around the country. I will say every year our list of participating bankers changes. We try to expand it considerably. But if you have any challenges getting in touch with anybody through the system, I'm always there to help facilitate a connection. Additionally, I'd also like to recommend another key resource for all of you on the line, and that is the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC has a ton of information available, and you can sign up for their scam alerts, and they'll notify you about all the different types of scams that are occurring almost on a daily basis. They'll have some information, a blurb, a blog, some sort of resource that's emphasized and available. So those are some really key information that I just want to take a few minutes today to talk about. And here is my contact information. I know I went through that a little bit quickly, but I thought that would be a really good overview for everybody on the line. And I wanted to see if there may be any opportunity for some questions or anything along those lines that I could address for all of you.
We don't have any questions at the moment in the chat, but if anyone would like to write a question in the chat, we can stay on for a couple more minutes, Sam.
Sure. I'm here and I'm available.
Sam, one more time, would you like to put up your contact information? That way folks can jot that down if they think of questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you think of any other questions, you can also email me directly at kbarksdale@sheriffs.org, and I'll be sure to get your questions to Sam. And as a reminder, we will be putting the recording for this webinar on our website at sheriffs.org.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate the comment. And thank you, Christy, for sharing that.
Of course. And I don't think we have any questions coming through. So like we said, feel free to email us if you think of any questions. And on behalf of the National Sheriff's Association, I'd like to thank the ABA and Sam for such a wonderful informational webinar. I'd also like to thank the COPS office for their support on this webinar. This webinar was recorded and will be put on our website at sheriffs.org in the next few days. And finally, thank you to all of our participants today. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.